In this video, I've created a Java class called Chapter 3 Demo in order to illustrate the idea between compilation errors and runtime errors. First thing I've done is I've imported the scanner class because I want to be able to read input from the terminal. I've begun my class, Chapter 3 Demo, and inside of that class I have the main method. Remember, the method main must be inside your class. Now, what I do is I declare three variables, integers x, y, and z. I instantiate a scanner object named reader, and then I begin with a series of prompts. Prompt the user to enter an x value, and then I read in the x value through the reader. Prompt the user to enter a y value, read that in through the reader, and then a z value, read that in through the reader. Then I print out several different things. X plus y plus z is a string. This is called a string literal because I have it literally typed into my program. And then what it's going to do is it's going to find the sum, it's going to convert it to a string, and then print it out along with this string here. And then x divided by y. So first thing I want to do is I want to compile my program. Everything's on the up and up. Let's go ahead and run the program. Enter a value for x, 5, 6, and 2. Be prepared because something weird's going to happen. Now, 5 plus 6 plus 2 is not 562. And x divided by y should not be 0. So what we're experiencing here is a problem of semantics. This is a semantical problem. Okay? Well, let's explain what that means. First, let's talk about how did x plus y plus z become 562. Well, it's because I began with this string literal right here. And so what it's literally doing is it's converting x to a string first and then attaching it to the end of this string. Then it converts y into a string and attaches it to the end of that string. And then z it converts into a string. So what if I want the literal sum? Well, what I have to do is add in parentheses for order of precedence. So now what it will do is it will actually add up the values x, y, and z, and then it will convert that to a string and add it to the end of this literal string right here. So now let's use the numbers again. 5, 6, 5, 6, 2, and now voila. X plus y plus z is 13. That makes sense. So here it was a semantical problem. I solved the problem by adding precedence or putting a grouping symbols around x, y, z. But wait a minute. What about x divided by y? X is 5, y is 6. 5 divided by 6 is not 0. The problem here is that x, y, and z are integers. They're not floats. Integers can only hold integer values. And so if I take, on my calculator, 5 divided by 6, I get a decimal number, 0.83 repeating. That's a decimal value. What is the integer part of that decimal number? Well, 0.83 repeating. So what it does is it grabs the integer part and stores that into the result. So x divided by y, or 5 divided by 6, becomes the number 0 because an integer, the division of two integers, can't become a decimal. All right, well, how do I get around that? There is a way to get around that. And one of the ways is to cast this into a float. Now, the way that I do that is I surround float, the reserved word float, in parentheses, and what it will do is it will perform the division and then cast it into a floating point number. The value won't be stored in x or y, it will just be printed directly to the terminal. So, okay, let's try this again. Compile, run, 5, 6, 2, and now I can see something far more meaningful. X plus y plus z is 13, x divided by y is 0.83 repeating. I want to bring this division concept home just a little bit further. So let me go back and say x divided by y in my program, and now let me go ahead, recompile, and then rerun the program. Now I'm going to enter 7, 3, and 4. Now we know that 7 plus 3 plus 4 is 14. But what do you think you'll get when you have 7 divided by 3? How many times does 3 go into 7? 2 times. So technically we should get 2.3 repeating. But that doesn't happen because x divided by y is going to become an integer, so it becomes the integer 2, which is just the integer part. Again, how can I get around this? By casting this into a floating variable or a floating result, or I could even say float w here, and then when I perform this calculation I can say w equals cast to a float x divided by y, and then I can just print the value for w right here. And that should work. Let's go ahead and try it. So 7, 3, 4, and there we go. 14 and 2.3 repeating. Now, what happens if I accidentally misspelled reader here? I compile. Let's save it first. There we go. I've just got a compilation error. The compiler caught an error because it doesn't understand what readr is. Cannot find symbol. And so this is called a compile time error. And I fixed that. Also, if I'm missing semicolons, that creates a compile time error. But now let me do something that's not a compile time error. That's a runtime error. Five, 0, 6. Something happened. This is a runtime error. Can you catch what it was? I divided by 0. So the compiler didn't see anything wrong with my program. So there was no reason for the compiler to throw a compile time error. But when I threw in 0 for the value of y, when it actually tried to perform that calculation, it decided to spit out infinity. And other times what's going to happen is you'll actually have an error print to the screen and it will say runtime error encountered. And so that's an example of a runtime error, which means there's really nothing wrong with the syntax, but you've got to be careful about the values that you're inputting into the program. Okay, I hope this was a little bit helpful. God bless you, wherever you are today.